Hello, hello, hello. How are you guys doing today? Okay, so today I want to talk about Zach Sellers, who is the guy that was on the Be Better podcast that came out and made all these allegations about James Charles having a relationship with Kayla Malik's abuser, Evan Johnson, who was just arrested, and Kayla Malik won her court case. I want to talk about that today. I want to talk about Zach Sellers' response to that, and what the people are saying in the comment sections of his TikTok where he responded to it. James Charles alleged that he is filing a lawsuit against Zach Sellers for his allegations that he made and said there's no truth to it whatsoever. My video yesterday was about James Charles responding to these allegations, responding to the fact that for a long time he stood by Evan Johnson, who was the abuser in the relationship with Kayla Malik. So I want to talk about that, but I just have to say, you know, it's so strange when I go into every year and I think about, like, I wonder what topics are going to come up and I'm going to be covering this year. I didn't even know these people. And, well, James Charles, obviously I knew, but I didn't even know who these people were until like 2 weeks ago. And so to be covering this and to have so many people reach out to me and cover this, to ask me to cover this and say, like, you know, what do you think about this? And what do you think about that? And it's interesting. And sometimes I'm kind of like, you know, I'll do a video and I'll give my take on it based on just what I've seen. And I think, did I, like, maybe I'm like misreading the whole situation. And yesterday I got done with my video. And if you didn't watch my video yesterday, I'll just give you kind of a quick synopsis about it. But I was talking about James Charles' response video. And in the video, he does this whole deflection tactic where he shows these, you know, receipts of his text messages between he and Kayla, and then he talks about he did not have a relationship, and he talks with Evan, and he talks about flying Evan out there to California where he stayed with him for a couple days, and then James kind of figured out that he was lying to him and that he does not support him, he does not stand by him, and all this kind of stuff. Anyway, I made the video yesterday, and I was like, James is really missing the point. Like, it's not about the allegations that he had a relationship with this guy. I mean, I think that a lot of people seem to be very consumed with that idea, and they seem to be very concerned with that idea. And what I explained in my video yesterday is that when you look at the history of James Charles scandals, okay, one of the overwhelming themes throughout James Charles scandals in the last 6 to 7, 8 years is this prominence of sexual misconduct. Whether he's talking to minors, whether he is hitting on straight guys, whether he's asking straight guys if they're bi-curious, whether he's dipping into people's DMs. You know, it's just this long history of sexual misconduct. And so there's a lot there. It's a pattern of behavior at this point, right? And so I think people want to make that the story because that is what James Charles is known for. And in a way, James Charles is using his own history as a deflection tactic off of what the real issue is. He's using it as like, okay, you guys have come for me for these things in the past, and, you know, and he's even kind of using that as, like, he mentioned in his response video that he had gone through a very similar thing that Zach had, and that Evan had, and that he was sympathetic towards him, and that Evan was manipulating him because Evan was like, you know, like, I'm really depressed. You know, James had been really depressed after Toddy came out with his video. And I'm watching it, having covered this stuff, you know, and I'm thinking, yeah, James, but you lost 3 million subscribers. You were in Australia. You did this apology video sitting in like a hotel room bathroom where your hair is disheveled. Then you came back and you put together this highly scripted video, No More Lies, showing what receipts you chose to pick out and display in this video. And then Toddy made another video. It's just like this back and forth at that time that went out. And what just happened was that Toddy, James, Jeffrey, and Shane just shut up. They stopped talking about it. To this day, we have no idea what the truth is behind the scenes. We have no idea. We don't know if YouTube stepped in and said that people have insinuated that YouTube stepped in and said, you guys need to stop fighting. You need to work this out on your own. You know, we do know that James Charles' channel was demonetized for a while based on his behaviors, based on the holding myself accountable video. That's a huge deal that I think people forget about. That James Charles' channel was demonetized, okay, for I think a period of 6 months, which he took a hiatus from YouTube and didn't put any videos up. Why would he? He wasn't making any money off of it anyway. But James Charles was demonetized by YouTube based on those allegations. That's a huge part that we kind of forget sometimes, right? So I'm sitting there and I'm thinking, you know, maybe I don't know enough about this whole situation. And I'm scrolling through Instagram And Jen Loves Reviews comes up, and I love Jen so much, and she always, I feel like, just gets it right. I feel like Jen gets it right. And Jen does her research, and, you know, Jen is so much different than what I do. She's not a drama commentary channel. She does these deep dives. I think she's done like 8 or 9 hours into James Charles. For those of you out there that are James Charles, like, fans and defend him at any expense, it would really be worth a watch for you to spend 8 hours. Put it on 2x speed and watch it at 4 hours. Sorry, Jen. You know, I mean, that's a feature-length film these days. And really watch the history of James Charles and the scandals, because when you do, what you realize is her videos are fantastically done. Jen's videos are fantastically done. She does deep dive into James Charles over several videos. What you realize is, okay, that not only is his behavior a pattern, not only is how he moves in the world, okay, which is weird at the least, inappropriate in the middle, and probably to some degree illegal, okay, but it's just all through all different kinds of things, you know, and it's not just the sexual misconduct. It's in how he speaks to people, and it's how he addresses people, and it's how, you know, I mean, I talked about this in my video yesterday. It's all the way from him faking his entire career with this ring light, gets him on the Ellen DeGeneres show, you know, was like supposedly the first makeup boy when there were other makeup guys that were doing makeup before him. And then it's one thing after another. Then there were these, you know, things about Ebola in Africa that came out. And it's just been one thing after another through his entire career. You know, I mean, James Charles has had a consistent history, other than the 6 months that he took off of YouTube. And he has had a consistent history of just not being a great person. And yet so many people look up to him as a role model. You know, I said in my video a couple days ago, I said that I was really, really disappointed when I saw that the GLAAD Awards, okay, which is an organization that gives awards every year for LGBTQI plus representation in media, and that James Charles was on the red carpet. They invited him. An LGBTQIA plus organization invited James Charles to their red carpet awards event. I mean, this is a huge deal, okay? Not a lot of people are getting invited to that. Just the up and up in the LGBTQI plus community, okay, are being invited to this. You would think that an organization like GLAAD that is fighting for the rights of LGBTQI plus people would maybe not platform somebody that is a self-proclaimed predator, which he is, and I know people still want to fight with me about that in the comment section, but he is. Go watch his Holding Myself Accountable video. It's been re-uploaded on YouTube. You know, somebody in my comment section yesterday said, I have it downloaded on my phone. Other people have downloaded it, you know? It's still out there. And if you don't believe me on that, go to his own channel and watch his open conversation video, where it's basically the same video, but then he blames it on a drama commentary channel, but he still discusses what happened and talks about the power differential, and that he understood the power differential of talking to these minors. And then he comes out with this Cosmopolitan article, please uncancel me, and says he's not, you know, before that he said he wasn't going to get in his DMs anymore, and his Instagram DMs are just problems, and that he's like, then he comes out in the Cosmopolitan article and talks about how he's a doorman to his DMs and he has to ask for IDs and things like that. But he had previously said that he wasn't going to use his DMs as dating apps anymore, even though he had also got on Instagram and said that he was looking for a soulmate. And if you felt like you were his soulmate, apply to him in his DMs. And then now all these 2 years later, okay, we have this huge situation that's going on all around this young woman, okay, who is a victim of DV. And we have this huge situation that has really nothing to do with James Charles or all these other fools, okay? The story should be about her. And it breaks my heart that all the focus is on James Charles, right? And so James Charles wants his day in the sun, so baby, you're going to get your day in the sun, okay? You're going to get your day in the sun. So, but it makes me sad, okay? It makes me really sad that it's kind of like people are kind of missing it sometimes with this. But when you've watched it for a really long time, it's hard not to see the patterns and the nuances of the behaviors of James Charles. It's kind of like, you know, when you've done something for so long, just for example, okay? Like if you play, I don't know, like if you're a dancer and you watch Dance Moms, okay, and they're putting some dance together, and you're like, well, that's not really that hard because I've done that, and I've taken dance class since I was 5. I haven't, but I'm just saying, if that was you. When you have been covering drama commentary, and you've literally covered almost all these scandals, or at least watched them closely, okay, when something like this comes out, and you see people defending James Charles in the comment section below, you have this response to it that, like, people wake up. Like, this is not the first time. Like, this is not even the 20th time. And one of the things that Jen talks about is that it's not just about his pattern of behavior of how he acts. It's also a pattern of behavior of how he responds to allegations. That his responses to allegations are patterns of behavior themselves. That if you look at them across the board, he responds in a very similar manner in almost every single way. It's just like it's written at this point that he knows how to do it, right? So I'm rolling through Instagram yesterday, and I saw this thing come up, and it was James Charles' response video on TikTok that I covered yesterday. And I'm like, who is posting this? I don't follow any influencers, really. I mean, Jen I follow, I adore her, but I don't really follow any influencers and stuff like that. And so I was like, who is posting this on my thing? Like, Spill Some Tea With Me is like one of the accounts that I follow because she's always putting stuff up about, you know, all different kinds of drama commentary. But other than that, I don't really follow, you know, that many people. I don't follow really any of these beauty influencers anymore. I did away with that years ago. And so I was like, who's posting this thing? And I kept on watching it, and all of a sudden Jen comes up. And this is the second time she's talked about this in the last couple days. I almost reached out to her, and I was like, no, like, I want to wait and see if she puts out a video about this. And so I'm watching it, and she's talking about what I'm talking to you about right now. And the video that she put, the Instagram reel that she put up a couple days ago, and the one that she put up now, she says in there both, I have covered this extensively. I have done 8 to 9 hours, okay, of covering a deep dive of James Charles and his behaviors. And what you have to understand is that this is not new, okay? And so she's like, you have to understand this knowledge before you go in and you watch his response video. And she breaks it down. I was going to include it in here, but I'm not going to, you know, take that away from Jen. It's fantastic what she does, okay? Because she goes through and he throws these receipts up in his video, and he shows this conversation that he has between he and Kayla, okay? And in the conversation, what Jen shows, she shows it like big and breaks it down. And I'm sure she'll do this probably in a video. But what she shows is that the conversation between James and Kayla, which she just kind of flashes on the screen and acts like, oh, well, I didn't really know. She says in there, okay, Kayla says to James Charles, now he did a 10-minute TikTok response, okay? At the beginning of it is where he shows the receipts, the messaging. And he says in there, he didn't know how bad the whole situation was. That's what the whole premise of the foundation of him doing this response. I didn't know. How could I possibly know that it was this bad of a situation? Jen shows that in his text, or the messages back and forth between her, that Kayla says he is crazy, and he did the worst thing that any human being could do. And also insinuates that she was abused by him. And James, still knowing that, stood by him and invited him out to LA. And Jen says in her thing, anything after this is irrelevant because James Charles has already lied in his response video. And when I watched this, I was like, oh my God, she's absolutely 100% right. And then she goes in to describe that this is how James Charles always does things. And she says at the very beginning of it, she says, you have to really listen to how James Charles says things because he speaks very fast and he shows a lot and he goes off on different tangents. And is it intentional? Who knows at this point, right? But I knew when I was watching that response video that there was a reason why it reminded me of the No More Lies thing. Now, I have watched that No More Lies video, I don't even know how many times, okay? And picked it apart. And knowing that he is only showing what pieces of the text messaging that he's going to show, right? And it's a fear tactic. It's because if I show these things, James Charles, Toddy Westbrook, Shane Dawson, they don't know what I have on them, what's in my text messages. So if I show this, this is a hint to say, come for me and show your text messages, and I'll show all your stuff too, okay? And who knows what text messaging occurred between all of them? Who knows what all that said? So I'm watching all this go down, and I watched Jen's thing, and I was like, well, I guess I didn't get it wrong, because Jen very much has the same, you know, stance as I do. And yet again, it's like, you know, for those of us that have covered it, since James Charles has been on YouTube and TikTok and Instagram, it's like we really know the real James Charles. And yet then you have all these people that are defending James Charles, and you can just tell by the comments, kind of, that they're very, very young, you know, that it's people that are very, very young that are defending James Charles, which is sad, because I think this is, you know, somebody commented on my video yesterday, and they said, why is a 60-year-old man commenting on 20-year-old drama? Fair. I think that's a fair comment. I'm 52 years old, actually. I'm not 60. I wish I looked better and people didn't guess me at 60, but I guess I do look 60. I don't know. I guess yeah, I thought I still kind of looked good. But anyway, but I guess I do look 60. But, you know, maybe if some of the 20-year-olds would maybe look at the life experience of people that came before them, then maybe they wouldn't fall through some of these same patterns. So it might be wise to maybe listen to some people that have a little bit more life experience than you. I don't know that 20-year-olds taking advice from 20-year-olds is going to really probably fare well in this world. Now, when I was 20 years old, I'm 52, not 60, but I'm 52, speaking back on my experience of being 20 years old, 21 years old, 22 years old, 23 years old, 24 years old, 25 years old, 26, all the way to 52, okay? What I know at 20 is that when people like my father or my mother or my stepmother or my aunts and uncles or family friends would try to give me suggestions, okay, or try to give me advice, that I didn't hear it. Because at 20 years old, I thought that I knew what was best. I thought I knew everything. At 52, what I know looking back on the world is, I didn't know much at all, okay? But I don't think that's something that you can tell somebody. I think that's something that you have to live. I wish I would have listened to the life and the suggestions, you know, of the people that came before me. And I've shared this in a lot of my other videos, but I had a conversation with my dad a long time ago. And my dad, who is 84 years old and he's very wise, my dad said to me, I think when I was in my 20s, he said, I wish I could show you all the mistakes and the successes that I had in my life, and you could base your life around that, and you would have an amazing life. But I know you have to make your own choices and live your life and learn your life that way, right? So, yes, I'm older covering drama. I don't know what to tell you. You know, I'm older covering drama. But maybe if some of these younger people would listen to some people with life experience, okay, and they would listen to the advice that they're giving them based on their own experience of making mistakes, learning lessons along the way, like I said to James Charles yesterday, okay, in my video, and what I said was, when you don't know the full story of a situation that is so serious, like allegations of DV or abuse, okay, or assault in a relationship, it might be better to stay out of that. And the reason why I know that is because I've had many friends in relationships through the years, okay? Many friends of mine in relationships through the years. Now, I didn't take the side of the abuser, but I've had situations where I've gotten caught in the middle, and I've willingly put myself in the middle. They weren't abusive situations. You know, they were arguments that a couple was having. What I've learned is that is not for me that's not a place for me to go, okay? And I don't even need I need to stay completely out of it, right? So, at 52, almost 60 years old, I have learned that lesson. I don't think that's a lesson I knew at 20 years old. It just isn't. And in all honesty, I wish I would have listened to the people that were a little bit older than me when I was younger, because I probably could have had to not forego or I could have foregone some of the mistakes that I made in my life, and maybe I'd be a little bit more successful today. But I didn't really catch on till my 30s or 40s. I wish I had caught on to it sooner. I really do, you know? By the way, that person that left that comment threaded my comment section yesterday all in defense of James Charles. So I don't know what that says about that, but you do you. Okay, so anyway, I think it's always interesting that we live in this world, and I will just say this, that we live in this world where we want to get, you know, all upset about this and about that and about this. But like on social media platforms, being ageist is completely okay. You know, it's no problem for people to completely be ageist. I will tell you, and just come for you're old and blah, 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 whatever. I don't take tons of offense to that. I just don't. I just wanted to offer a different perspective. I will tell you, in all transparency, I've thought to myself before, maybe I'm getting a little too old to cover some of this stuff because my interest level is not as great. My interest level in this is high, and I will tell you why it is, okay? Because I think the story of Kayla Malik is really important. I think her story is really important. And, you know, I went and I looked over on TikTok today because I was like, I want to see the things that are on here. And Kayla Malik put up on Instagram, or on TikTok last night, probably on Instagram too. She put this post up, and it said, taking the day to celebrate our win, to celebrate the peace. Words can't express how I'm feeling. I have so much to tell y'all tomorrow. And this was 18 hours ago. And then she said on her next post, I'm so overwhelmed going through my mentions. I can't express my gratitude for you. This win is for us. All of us. Thank you, thank you, thank you. I love you. We did this. We won. Now, it's not just about Kayla Malik, okay? Her story is so important. But the reason that her story is important is because she is speaking to other young women and men or of any age, that are going through very similar situations. One of the most untalked about situations that we deal with in society is specifically young ladies that are in abusive situations, violent relationships in high school, okay? But let's say they're dating somebody popular, or they're dating somebody that's more believable than them, or they don't want to be alone, or for 1,000,001 reasons, okay, that a lot of us stay in toxic relationships. They don't get out. Or they do tell somebody, and that person doesn't believe them. And so, again, it's the believability, okay? And so they don't leave that relationship, and they don't get out of it, you know? And there's 1,000,001 reasons. Yesterday, I saw a comment on my video, and somebody said, my question is that Kayla Malik knew how James Charles was as a person all these years ago, okay? Why would she befriend him knowing what a shit person he is? In the context of talking about James Charles' situation with this, I think that question is an interesting, fair question. I think it's an interesting question to me why any influencer would stand by James Charles. People ask me all the time, why does James Charles still have a platform? James Charles has a platform because so many influencers and brands stand by him. The GLAAD organization invites him to their red carpet awards event. He's invited to all different kinds of things. That's the reason why James Charles still has a platform today. And the platform allows him the power to continue to hurt people, and that it continue to stand by abusers and things like that, right? Because let's just be for real. If James Charles tomorrow was not on TikTok or Instagram because of all of the things that he had done through the years and was literally at home living on his own money, or was just trying to, I don't know, get by working at the Mac counter or something, this whole situation and James Charles' involvement in it would be irrelevant, because Kayla Malik would never have been talking to him to begin with, because he wouldn't have been reaching out to her to do this video. But when somebody asks a question like that, okay, why did Kayla Malik befriend James Charles knowing his history? What we've just done in that moment is we have just taken the situation of Kayla Malik going through this abusive relationship, okay, which has now been proven in a court of law, all right? She's gone through this abusive situation, and now we are victim shaming that person, okay? And blaming her for poor choices that she's made. Do I think it's the wisest choice that she's saved by James Charles? No. James Charles is not the abuser. He's the one standing by the abuser, okay? So I don't know why she chose him to be a friend. Maybe she just was trying to be, I don't know. Maybe she was just trying to be as sweet to this person that she didn't want anything to do with or not, you know? Somebody else said something about, like, she unfollowed James Charles, or she unfollowed this Zach Sellers that came out and made these allegations against James Charles, and then she refollowed James Charles. I actually looked, because I wanted to see if this was true, and here you can go right here on TikTok. She still follows James Charles, and she still follows Zach Sellers. Now, I don't know if she unfollowed one or if she unfollowed both. I think the girl has had a little bit more to deal with in the last couple days than following or unfollowing James Charles, okay? If you've ever had somebody in your life that's a victim of DV or abuse or violence, or you have ever gone through it yourself and you're on the other side of it after a court case or taking them to the police department or whatever, their concern is probably not with what people are talking about over here. Now, she has indicated that she's going to let you guys know more, and I don't know if James Charles is going to be part of that or not, okay? I guess we'll find out. But I think that this whole situation, what's sad about it is, okay, is that we live in this world of hyper-consumption of high-level drama, okay? Like, people all the time are like, drama channels are dead, drama channels this. Maybe on YouTube they are. I still see drama channels that get hundreds of thousands of views, you know? Mine doesn't, but I do see some channels that do. But when I go over to TikTok, and I don't even get on TikTok unless I'm looking this stuff up, and I see what people are interested in, okay, are very dark situations that are high level, not even drama really, but just really sad situations. For example, I mean, Risa Tisa that did like the 140 plus TikTok series about this guy that she was with that was horrible to her, okay? The reason why that did so well was because people are interested in the pain of others, all right? So you have James Charles, who is on this high level that is now involved himself. It's opportunity meets desire is what it is, okay? You have James Charles as a huge influencer, Kayla Malik, who's also a big influencer, and then you have this situation with Kayla Malik, and then James Charles is in it? Why? It makes, like, it's crazy, okay? You know, I mean, it's like, the only way I can kind of explain it is, like, you know, watching Traitors, and like the most unbelievable person that you would ever think in the entire world would show up on Traitors, and you'd be like, oh my God, I'm watching just for this person, you know? I think a lot of people watched last season because they wanted to see what Tom Sandoval was going to do, that had never watched Traitors before. And no, this is not a reality TV show. This is somebody's real life. But to Kayla Malik, what's so unbelievable about this, okay, is to the teenage girls and also guys, because it happens to guys too, that are in abusive situations and experiencing violence, all right, whether it's in their homes or whether it's in relationships. You know, she's speaking directly to them, even to men and women that are older than her or her own age. What she's saying is, speak up, go to the police, you know, and maybe it won't fare well for that person, but it's setting boundaries. It's saying no to the situation. And sometimes it's not always about the outcome. Sometimes it's taking care of yourself. And I think she's a huge hero to a lot of these people out there. And that's the bigger story to me. I can't even imagine as an influencer how scary it had to be, okay, to come out and share this story and talk about what was going on, and then not even know, like, I could go to court and he won't be arrested, he won't be convicted, I don't know what's going to happen. And yet she did it. She went all the way through, you know? And that's a miracle. And I'm so happy for her. But, you know, there are millions and millions of DV victims and, you know, SA victims and victims of violence every single day in our country whose voices are never heard. You know, I think there's a power in own voices, and own voices means hearing your story and somebody else. And I think there's such a power in hearing your story from somebody else. And I can't even imagine from somebody that is experiencing that or has experienced that, to hear Kayla Malik share her story and then also get to feel the validation that a court believed her and heard her. To people that are experiencing that out there, that's powerful. That is huge, okay? You know, people were criticizing her. I mean, most people were like rooting her on. But there were a couple people that were like, you know, she did this like TikToking from the courtroom, you know, and played this music, and people were like kind of coming for a little bit. Not a lot, but a few. And I was like, let her play whatever song she wants to play, okay? You have no idea the hell that this girl went through. You know what I mean? You have no idea the hell that this woman went through. So I just wanted to say that part first before I got into this Zach Sellers thing, because so many people have asked me about the Zach Sellers thing. Now, I'm going to show you this TikTok in just a second, and I'll respond to it. But Zach Sellers, okay, so yesterday James Charles came out with his response, which was in my video yesterday. It was at the end of the video. I think some people didn't make it to the end because they wanted to tell me about the Be Better podcast, which I also included. They said, the Be Better podcast, they said exactly what was going to happen to James Charles. It was weird. I watched the Be Better podcast, like their TikTok, the guy who's the host of it, and he said exactly what was going to happen in James Charles' TikTok addressing the issue, and it was like verbatim what he addressed. It was so bizarre. But at the end of my video yesterday, I included the Be Better video, and then I also included James Charles right after that. So you could see him side by side, because what he predicts is exactly what James Charles did. So anyway, in James Charles' video, he said that he is going to file a lawsuit against Zach Sellers, who is the guest on the Be Better podcast, who is also friends with Evan Johnson, who allegedly saw receipts of James Charles speaking very sexual to him, something about bending over, I don't know, a table and calling him daddy or something like that. I don't know anything about that. But anyway, and then apparently there's some video where you can hear something. Now, yesterday when I talked about this in my thing, I said in there that James Charles gets in the video and he said that you can release the video, that like if you have the video, release it. And so many people commented, I hadn't even thought of this. I thought this was really smart. You guys picked up on it. So many people commented and said he can't release that video without also having Evan's approval as well. Because if Evan's on the video, he can't just release that. James knows that. So James is being manipulative. And I was like, Peter, you're kind of slowing down. Like, you didn't catch that, right? And I was like, there is so much truth to that. There is so much truth to what they said. James Charles is like, release the video. I don't know if he was almost kind of like thinking Zach would be like, okay, I'm gonna release the video. But now it makes me question, is there a video? Because Evan Johnson, who is, you know, now in jail and I guess got bailed out or whatever, he is going to have to like talk to Zach Sellers about, anyway, it's so messy. But again, it's all detraction over the fact that James Charles, for a very long time, I mean, he said in his video yesterday, he started talking to her in January. So January till now, when he came out with his, I mean, we're talking 4 months, over 4 months, or 3 months, it was the end of January, has stood by an abuser. when his partner was telling him that he was being abused by her. And we know that now. And James Charles didn't have a problem with that. Okay? So whatever the situation is, you know, I just, for me, it's crazy. So Zach comes out with this TikTok and basically says that his lawyers are trying to contact James too. The camera stopped. James said that he couldn't contact, his lawyers couldn't contact Zach because he only had one contact email or something like that. I didn't understand it. And that he was going to file a lawsuit. Now, in my video yesterday, it was interesting because I think I filmed my video and then Zach came out. Because people were like, why didn't you include Zach's thing in there? I think it came out around the time that I was filming it, or somebody hadn't sent it to me yet. I don't know. But anyway, I wish I had included it yesterday and then I wouldn't be making this video today. It would have been all one video. But anyway, in my video yesterday, what I said was, okay, that if this goes to court, that James Charles, okay, could have other people be like deposed in the situation. And I compared it. This is where people, like, they don't know the whole history sometimes, right? Tati Westbrook had a lawsuit with her ex-partner, okay, which is now over and done with, about their brand. In that lawsuit, it was questioned whether or not Tati Westbrook, or Shane Dawson, Jeffree Star, and James Charles were going to be deposed. If they were deposed, you could be asked anything under deposition, right? And people are talking about James Charles could plead the fifth. Well, James Charles absolutely can plead the fifth in defense of himself, but it's going to make him look bad if he's being asked direct questions, okay, about allegations that he addressed in a video. Now, when I say self-proclaimed predator and people have an issue with that, what words would you like me to use? James Charles got in a video, apologized to his victims for predatorial behavior. That, to me, is a self-proclaimed predator, okay? I don't know if that was on 7th grade math or spelling test this week, but as a 60-year-old, that's called a self-proclaimed predator, okay? So I don't know what words you want me to use when somebody gets in a video and literally self-proclaims as a predator and apologizes to their victims. I don't know what other... I think I'm being really fair with that word if you want to know the truth. People have such issues with that. It's like, did you not know that the video existed? So when the Tati lawsuit was going on, people were like wondering, like, if they deposed James Charles, like, what are they going to ask him? Because then it will be in the legal transcript, okay? And anything that's in the legal transcript, I mean, if they ask about the falling out of Tati and Jeffree and James, well, it could come in. The birthday party, the videos they made, all of that could come up. The allegations of James Charles, Jeffree Star's talked about this voice note forever. It could bring in who those influencers were that James Charles tried to hit on, and then it would be legal. That would be legal record, right? Okay. So what I said in my video yesterday is, if James Charles pursues this lawsuit and it's not settled out of court, if Zach Sellers says, take me to court, we're going to court, okay? And they start deposing people, it could be a huge issue for James Charles. It could be a huge issue because they're going to bring up the character of each person, okay? And in doing that, they're going to bring in character witnesses. So, for example, James Charles will probably bring in his friends, his family, things like that. Zach Sellers is probably going to bring in people too. And one of the people that he'll probably bring in is the host of the Be Better podcast. And when he brings him in, okay, because then it enters in to all of what was asked on the podcast and what was addressed. If he does, or he just asks some random person, okay, that maybe had a falling out with James Charles. Why did you have a falling out with James Charles? Why did your opinion? I mean, they could, Antonio Garza just did this podcast the other day talking about, we've been knowing this about James Charles for years, okay? They could depose Antonio Garza and they could say, you made a podcast about this. What do you think? You know? They could depose anybody. They could depose me. And I could be in the courtroom. They could say, how did you find out about James Charles? I'd say, well, when he did the Ellen DeGeneres show. Well, are you aware of this? Yes, I'm aware of James Charles did a Holding Myself Accountable video. Where is the video today? It's been re-uploaded on YouTube. Then they find the video. Then that's entered into court evidence. Okay? And that's James Charles on video, okay, self-reporting as a predator. It's problematic for James. You know, and I mean, I had somebody call me the other day or text me like a week ago, and they were like, this could be the end of the beginning of the end of James Charles' career. So James Charles so flagrantly getting in a video and saying that he's taking this guy to court, I think he jumped the gun on it. I really do. And I think that James Charles wasn't really thinking this through. This is where James Charles is threatening lawsuits and hired this prosecutor and stuff like that. I just cannot believe that a retired prosecutor would tell James Charles, I think it's a good idea for you to jump on a 10-minute TikTok and go off on this guy, okay? So Zach Sellers came out in his TikTok, and part of what he said was, you know, take me to court, and I've got receipts. And what was interesting was his comment section is a lot of people saying, drop the receipts, drop the receipts, drop the receipts. If Zach Sellers really has an attorney, now I said in my video yesterday, okay, that James Charles' attorney, there is no way they thought this was a good idea for him to get up in this TikTok and use it. But we live in the world of public opinion, okay? And this is where I don't think that James Charles is going to file a lawsuit, because he wouldn't have done a 10-minute video that could be scrutinized in a courtroom. I said this yesterday, okay? He's not going to do that. And so when he did that yesterday and he said all this kind of stuff, you know, that to a lawyer is like, this does not look good. This does not look good, okay? And I've addressed that in the past with other situations, that lawyers will tell people, do not ever speak about this on camera, because whatever you say can be used, all right? And so then Zach Sellers comes out and he says in his video, which kind of surprised me, James, your past could come up in this lawsuit. Your character could be in question. I was like, that's exactly what I said yesterday. And people in Zach Sellers, I mean, Zach Sellers' comment section of his TikTok, it's not good. You can tell it's all fandom for James Charles, okay? And one of the things that people are saying is, if you have the receipts, drop them. Well, I wouldn't. And I can tell you right now, if I had a team of attorneys around me, like Zach Sellers is saying that he has, his attorneys are saying, do not drop those receipts. We're going to save them for court. We're going to save all those for court. You know, so I have to be honest with you. I tend to believe Zach Sellers a little bit more. I don't know what he has. But any attorney in this situation, and this is where James Charles for years has said, well, my PR agents, on video he'll say PR, 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 and then behind the scenes he's telling all of us, his drama channels back in the day, I don't have PR, I've never had a PR agent. He lies. If his mouth is open, he is lying, okay? So the fact that he says he has these attorneys, he may have called a prosecutor and hired a prosecutor, he may have said he had a prosecutor, but I can tell you right now, that prosecutor is like, I'm fucked. If this, because now he's put out this TikTok, he's making all these claims, blah, 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 whatever. What does this person have? And it was interesting because James Charles, okay, in his thing, talked about, you can look into my, you can look at my YouTube, you can look into my OnlyFans, you can look into this, but he didn't say, you can look into my Instagram. And I thought that was interesting when I watched Zach Sellers' video, because Zach said in there, we're going to subpoena your phone, and when we do, we can go in and see all your messages, even the ones that are on vanish mode. And then we're going to see all of the young people that you're talking to that you don't want the world to know about, all right? When James Charles has said he isn't talking to those kind of people in his DMs anymore. And I hope he's not. I really do. For them and for him, I hope he's not doing that anymore. I really hope that he has been through therapy and grown and learned through all that. I don't know, okay? I don't wish that on anybody, and definitely not on the victims. But I hope that's not the case, okay? But who knows what it could say in there. You know, but James Charles, in opening consent in a TikTok, I said this yesterday, in opening consent, has opened himself to, a judge is going to say, James, you said it in a TikTok. You said we had full right to this kind of stuff. You know, you said you would show him anything. So that's taken his Instagram, your phone, and everything. So you have nothing to hide. And James Charles can't, like, delete all that kind of stuff, whatever, you know, even if it's in vanish mode is what Zach Sellers says. So he's like, I do have the receipts, and I will come out with it. You know, if it's in a, and this is the other thing that people need to understand, if it's in a court of law, and the video for some reason would come out, okay, then Evan Johnson does not have to approve for that video to come out in a court of law. That's a publicity thing or public thing. Like, Evan Johnson would have to approve for that video to be released, but not in a court of law. If that video, if there is some supposed video of Evan Johnson and James Charles doing something sexual, I mean, yes, it could be considered revenge porn, it could be considered that, but in a court of law, okay, to defend Zach Sellers, if Zach Sellers says, I have the video, I said I had the video, they'll say, present the video. Evan Johnson does not have to, he does not have to say that's okay to release the video. You're talking about a court of law. I think sometimes people get this confused, right? That we're talking about not the court of public opinion, but legal law. There's a huge difference between that, right? So now James Charles has come out with this response video, and he may have really fucked himself. So let's watch the Zach Sellers video, because this is what everybody wants to talk about instead of Kayla Malik's victory over this DV abuser, which is such a moment in history. I mean, you know, I was watching a situation, okay, and maybe this is a weird place to go with it, but like I said, I don't know a lot about this case, but when I was reading the articles and I was watching this, and I thought to myself, good for you. You know why? Because there are people that are no longer here to fight for themselves. For some reason, when I was watching this, I was like, this so reminds me of the Gabby Petito case, you know, and we've now seen the footage, and the police officers weren't listening to her, and they put him in a hotel room, and then Gabby Petito ends up dead. These are the things that happen every single day, okay? And Kayla Malik and Gabby Petito were influencers, but this happens every single day on your street, on your school, in college, in fraternity houses, in dorms, okay? In sorority houses, in apartment complexes. you know, to grandparents, to parents, to mothers, to fathers, to kids, to neighbors, to students. It happens every single day. So the fact that Kayla Malik got victory over this is amazing. Congratulations to you, Kayla. And I hope going forward, like you said in your thing, you're able to find some peace. All right, now everybody wanted me to talk about the Zach Sellers response. So let me throw it up here. I'll show it to you guys, and then I will respond to it. Well, I've already kind of responded to it, but we're going to read some of the comments afterwards. Here you go.
Hey James, so I'm on here because I'm responding to your video because you're going to sue me, and I can't wait to receive those papers and take this to court because everything I have spoken about is the absolute truth. Kind of crazy that you've been blowing the hell out of Kayla's phone up and she's not responding to you because she knows what you are and she knows the character that you are and she knows it's the absolute truth. And then you want to bring up Kayla's messages, my messages, but where are your and Evan's messages off Instagram? Oh wait, it was vanish mode. But just because it was vanish mode does not mean that we can't get a hold of those messages. Because when this goes to court, we will be able to get all of your Instagram messages. And I'm scared for whenever they get over to your Instagram and see all of your Instagram messages and all of your vanish mode because you don't want no one to take screenshots because who you think you are and who you are. But I'm scared that there's going to be all these little kids that are going to have to come forward because of all your past allegations. They're going to also look at characters. They're going to look at my character from the past, and they're going to look at your character from the past. And your character from the past is absolutely sick. You literally have videos of you admitting everything, which is absolutely sick. You are a sick human being. I cannot wait to take this to court. You will be canceled, and you do not deserve a platform. At no means whatsoever. Also, you want to bring up, yeah, I've been going live. Absolutely, I've been going live. And you know what? Just because you said that, I will be dropping Bye Sister merch because there's no more sister. You're going to fall off of this platform. I don't care how much energy this takes and how many people have to keep doing this, but I will not give up. You're fucking with the wrong one now, buddy, because I won't give up. You think I'm nice until you try to lie and try to cover up all of the allegations that you done because you're sick and you know that you're going to be canceled. I'm not going to let that happen by no means. So also you wanted to bring up that you reached out to my modeling agency, your legal team did, and because that was the right way to do it, so be it. Okay, if that was the right way to do it, then let that be. But my legal team has already been in touch with yours. We're waiting on the papers because we will be subpoenaing your phone. No matter if you have 1, 2, 3, 4 phones, whatever. Because I do know there has been kids that have reached out to me and have shown me evidence where you have said, don't take screenshots. And also, the Instagram messages have been on vanish mode. So this is not just, you taking up for, DV and being against Kayla. This is a lot more to it. So I cannot wait to bring this to court. So in the meantime, bye, sister.
Okay, so that's what Zach Sellers had to say. Now, at the bottom on here, he wrote in the little comment section, description box, he wrote, bye, sister, you're sick, all these poor kids that you have manipulated, okay? And when you go in here, at the comments, it's interesting to me, because he said you, effed with the wrong person. I'm not going to let this go. What's interesting to me about this, right, is that, I knew at some point that people were, James Charles through the years has tried to compartmentalize one scandal, move on from it, let everybody forget about it, rebuild a new audience. What this whole situation has done, and like I said in my video yesterday, this is not about James Charles and him having any relationship with Evan Johnson. This is about James Charles standing behind and beside a DV abuser, okay? That's the case. In all honesty, like I said in my video yesterday, I do not care if two consenting adults have sex. That's their business, okay? It's about the fact that he took the side, knowing the information, of an abuser. When his main population is women, young women, that he has celebrities that are wearing his makeup, that are marketing his brand, women that believe in empowerment, women that believe in women's rights, women that believe in supporting other women. And James Charles is standing oppositional to a woman, all right, as a supporter of a DV abuser. That's a huge thing to me, right? So anyway, but I've always known that at some point, all these scandals will be brought together. And I thought it was in Jen Love's Reviews 8-hour series. And apparently that was the part of it. I do think that will be used going back and looking at stuff. But, at the same time, it's it's interesting that now that James has spit fire and this guy's like, okay, I mean, it does look a little bit like he's trying to take the heat off himself and put it on James Charles and all his past allegations. But you know what? I mean, it is all consistent together of showing James's patterns of behavior, you know? So the comments underneath here are not great at all. Somebody said, do you realize this is about Kayla, not you? Because, you know, apparently he's coming out with merch. He does say in this that he's coming out with Bye Sister merch or whatever. And then he did this interview on the Be Better podcast, which really started off this whole thing with James Charles' involvement to begin with. So anyway, he's going on live streams and stuff like that. Somebody said there's panic behind those eyes. There's 80 replies to this. What does it say? I didn't really notice there was any panic behind his eyes. Maybe I'm not that great. You can literally see it. The way he kept looking to the side. James looked at the side of the screen too. Y'all laughing now. This is what I was talking about yesterday, okay? When people want to say, this is about Kayla Malik, it's not about them, but then you want to get in 80 comments about how somebody looks in a video like this, that's where we're taking the focus off of what the attention really needs to be about, okay? Not to mention, this is Zach Seller's first time responding to something like that. This is James Charles' 20th time, okay, if we're going to compare stories. Go back and watch his video sitting on a hotel room floor in Australia after Toddy Westbrook dropped her video. Let me know how panicked he looked in that video, okay? Why don't we do that? Somebody said, team no one but Kayla. 100% agree. If it's real, post it. He gave permission. Oh, 196. I don't know who's telling the truth, but I don't think he could post it even if he had to because there are two parties and Evan won't give permission. James came with receipts and proof. James came with the receipts and the proof that he chose to prove, okay? That he chose to show. Zach says in there in his own TikTok that he didn't show any of his messages between he and Evan, which is absolutely 100% true. It's not like, here, let me just show you all my receipts from the last 3 months that I have of these conversations. Let me show you all the conversations I had with every party. James didn't do that. He picked and chose. It's very similar to when I talk about people that do Q&As. Like when I do a Q&A, if you've ever watched my Q&As, I just literally roll through the questions and answer them. But when people do Q&As, they go through 1,000 questions and they specifically pick the 5 they want to address and they all wrap it around one question. It's very manipulative how people do Q&As. They all wrap it around one question, okay? And that's how people do Q&As. They pick and choose. James Charles picked and chose the receipts that he wanted to read. Somebody said, don't bring up the old allegations, stay on track, because this isn't about James Charles, this is about Kayla. And if you think it's fun making money off a situation that doesn't involve you, you're sick. And I agree with that. Kayla has gotten her piece now, and I think that Kayla will come out with her story, and I think that she will go on to be a role model for other young men and women that are in violent situations like this. But at this point, TikTok, okay, and everybody on TikTok, and you're on his commenting on it, so you're giving him a view, as is everybody else, and as am I. So, I mean, we've turned it into being about James Charles at this point, you know? We're all part of that society that's done that at this point. For the first time in my life, I actually believe James Charles. This is crazy. Somebody said, does anybody else get Evan Johnson vibes from this man? Not a single receipt, not you crashing out. His voice is so unserious. Somebody said, Kayla's not responding to you, and she literally followed him back and unfollowed you. 124 replies. I want to see, because I looked. And she follows both of them. Just check this out. Bro is in the deep end. Wait, who is in the deep end? Zachy. She follows both of them. I literally just looked before I made this video. James ain't in the right either. None of them are. It's how Zachy versus James. This is not even about them. They're talking about, as James said, post it. And then people on here are going in, how? It was on Jeff Evans' phone. Evan's now in jail. Seems pretty convenient for James. Who knows? This is about Kayla getting victory, not about you. I'm on James' side. Somebody said, this is... oh, this is not really a side-taking thing. And I know that I'm 60 years old, but when you get older, it's not always about a side-taking thing, okay? Or who's right or who's wrong in a situation. The whole situation's fucked up, right? The whole situation's fucked up. And really, the truth is, it is about Kayla, and it is about her story. And it is about what she's gone through, and that she's a hero to other people, and that she's a role model to other people, that she stood up for herself. And she said no, and she said, I'm going to go through this. And I think that that is what is important to be remembered. But right now, the internet is all wanting to know about James Charles and all this kind of stuff. I mean, if that weren't the case, and nobody really cared about that, nobody would be watching this, and this TikTok that's been up for one day wouldn't be have 21,000 comments on it. That's a lot of comments for people that don't care about the situation at all, you know? I mean, James Charles, let's look up his video and see how many his has. By the way, I looked at him, and he lost a lot of followers on TikTok, and really hasn't gained any back since this all happened. I think people are waiting to see what happened. I mean, James Charles has 4.3 million likes on this TikTok and 72,000 comments. So, you know, it's interesting that I think people are kind of sitting back and watching what's going to happen with this whole thing. I do think it's going to be interesting to see when Kayla Mallett comes out and addresses this. I do think this. I think she'll come out and tell everything that happened with court, and then I think she'll wait and she'll address the whole situation with James Charles. I don't think that her concern right now is who she's following on TikTok, and nor should it be. Okay? I think this girl should be living her best life in peace and serenity and harmony, and I will hope that for her. So I guess we're going to have to wait and see what happens. Let me know what you think about all this in the comment section below. I love you guys, and I'll see you tomorrow.